Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Mastering the Guitar. My name is Rick Ragosa, and I'm just basically here to help you and be a guide to this venture that you've taken on in playing the guitar. Okay? And the main focus on how I can be helpful is just helping you understand some of the basic fundamentals involved with playing and basic paths, and helping you kind of steer you on the right track on what you should be playing at which stage of the game. If you're beginner to intermediate, this depends on how seriously that you want to play. I encourage, though, that to some degree you take this advice seriously. Try to minimize the amount of doodling and the amount of playing chords and sort of sporadic phrases, and you'll notice how guitar players that don't know how to play very well or have learned a couple licks, you know, for years, young people come over and they pick up a guitar and they, you know, play like, you know, and like, you know, that's thrilling and all that stuff. The problem with that is, in the learning capacity and stage of that, is it doesn't show you anything. You don't learn anything. You kind of, well, I'll put my finger here. You don't really, there's nothing involved with having a clue of what you're doing. And that's detrimental in the long run, because you find yourself making all these sounds and you don't have a clue of what you're doing. Now, if that's your goals, just making sounds, disregard this information. But if your goal is to figure this instrument out, which it isn't that complex, getting some of the information down saves you the frustration, years of frustration. Trust me, I've been almost suicidal a number of times in my life because I so badly wanted to know how to play this thing and what the keys to understanding it were. But the frustration of not knowing how to do what, and it's just like, how did Eddie Van Halen do this? So it comes back down to disciplining yourself to learn a couple of scales that you need to know. And what I've done through this approach and this phase 1 and 2, this teaching, I call it a process of thinking, is narrow down sequentially the type of data that you should learn and why you should learn it in certain stages. And you just walk through this, and before you know it, you are equipped with fundamental information to play and understand this thing. And a part of that was, I used to teach a lot, and I've been teaching for a long time, and instead of just showing you where to put your fingers and having you do, you know, monkey do, seed licks, you know, you go home and show your parents and they say, that's wonderful. This, instead of actually sitting there and showing you material and learning and having to learn some things that I normally wouldn't even play, by equipping the student with the tools, you can figure it out for yourself, okay? And this way it also encourages you to just a little self-exploration, and you don't need to be strung out for lessons for years. You get basic lessons in 6 months. You can be equipped with years of data that will take you to digest and operate in. And that's pretty much my goal, is to maximize efficiency. My motivation is not to just string you out so you keep coming back for lessons, but to equip you with the point that you're at, to be as helpful, and again, to save time and cut down on the hassles and the frustrations and the struggles and literal depression, because you do plateau type of experience where there'll be times you feel like really cool this is happening, and sometimes it's just so frustrating. And what I found through the 20-some years that I've been playing is to be consistent with my practice, even on an intellectual level, like just to know what I need to practice and why I need to practice that, and whether I feel good about it or not, or if my fingers are just being disobedient that day, or what the factors are involved with why it feels foreign, to be consistent at it, even if it's just 5 minutes a day. And what happens is you build not only a vocabulary of the discipline and of applying yourself, but your goal setting is you're always looking towards tomorrow, okay? And that's the important thing. You're not going to get it today. You know, trust me. The effort that any exercise, you might, well, depending, you get to my age, 3 days later, you still feel that hike that you just, so there's things going on in your body that are transferred onto later time, so that you want to use that information to work for you. And that's what we're trying to do. Develop dexterity, which is slow, just go slow, and let your body let you know when it's time to go faster. And it will. If you just, the word even like humble yourself. Don't try to rush these things. Relax into this. Learning takes time. Everyone has their own aptitude and their own application process, and if you're a fanatic, we'll do 15 10-minute sessions a day. Sitting there for an hour is not going to be any more beneficial. In fact, I've found in some of the research that I've done, even on in school education, they found short periods of time encouraged the student to have a greater active mental imagery of the data that was learned and a greater command at recalling it. And that's what we're doing here, is applying principles to maximize the learning, okay? And how this applies directly to guitar is just dealing with small fragments of information, getting into your system, working with it, and then we grow on that, okay? It's a foundation and we just keep growing, and where you stop is up to you, okay? And that's purely your choice. And in this series, the main focus are dexterity, being able to move your fingers, independent motion, okay? And I've showed you a number of exercises, even this one right here, where here's 4 fingers, and you can use your thumb if you like, placed, okay, tip to tip, all right? Well, from here we can do drills. Let's use the thumb as 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's sets of 3. I do 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, okay? Just independently. And, you know, you got a second, put your hands together, give it a try. If it looks easy, give it a try. See if it is. If it feels really hard, then treat it like a learning experience. Say, I'm going to move my first finger, okay? Now, there's kind of a dual purpose to these drills. Not only in regards to what's going on right now, not only am I sending neurons to the necessary muscles to cause my first finger to move, okay, but I'm also eliminating the neurons being sent to these fingers so they do not move, okay? And that's the whole key to playing the guitar. At certain times, you'll be... At certain times, you'll be playing notes where fingers are doing something and other fingers are not. So at certain times you're sending signals to some of these digits, and at certain times you're not sending signals. But yet it's a whole part of the process. The chords and the sounds that you make are part of one process, okay? And so it's important. Train yourself to be able to move your first finger without moving the other ones, okay? If you can't do that, these are the guidelines, or what you can know, like the barometer to playing the guitar. If you can't do a basic drill like this, well, you know, literally, forget about Eddie Van Halen licks for a while. So the more you concentrate on developing your dexterity, the quicker it will be to actually play Eddie Van Halen licks. Then it's not a problem telling some fingers to move and others not to. When I first heard him do that, I just couldn't believe somebody could do that on a guitar. And then when I first saw them play in the late 70s, I just couldn't believe someone standing in front of me doing this stuff was making those sounds. Until I started experimenting, and humble yourself, get in tune, one finger at a time, small increments of data. I started with 1 finger and started with 2 hammer-ons, just, and the thrill of moving it out. And actually, you know, you can rush out on that. Okay, but then we can add a hammer-on. Get a little faster. We can use that phrase. Okay? But now, all together, that sounds great. Now we can even include an open string in there. I got a little hammer on here. Okay? The phrasing, though, all of that is based on small increments of data that are compound. They're just added, okay? And that's the key to success of how to play this instrument, is knowing that it's all, you know, we all have the ability to do this. It's for those who take, the ones who get the ability are for those who take the time to break it down and increment that data in their system, okay? Now, in the last lesson, we looked at the major scale, okay, which is a diatonic pattern, and that's how this instrument is tuned, concert C. We looked at the key of C, okay, and we're introducing the major scale, okay, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then returns back to the note again. In C, it was C to C. Okay, and in the key of C, the chords most commonly used, basic rock or blues, are 1, 4, 5. For those of you who take lessons before, you've heard it over and over again. And the sooner you get in tune with that, the sooner you can get on with it. Because there is a plethora a magnitude of information out there, and these songs we're listening to even today on the radio are 1-4-5 tunes. The sooner you figure that out, the sooner you can start playing, whether it's rock. That was a C, F, and G in the key of C, okay? Or whatever it might be, country. All right? The fundamental information is the same, C, F, and G, okay? And what that was is notes taken from the major scale to designate our guide points, C, F, and G, and then we build triads on them, okay? And there's 5 basic families, as I'm just, reaffirming basic information, and then we slowly expound on this. So in your thinking process, as you start digesting this information, and record these tapes so you can go over them a few times, because this is the key to understanding how the sounds relate to the shapes that you make. That when we have the major scale, that becomes our mother pattern or guide pattern, okay, or master pattern for figuring out everything else and all the applications on the instrument, okay? You might meet some fanatics and they're all talking Ionian modes and let's play a, I've heard a lot of this, oh, that's a Mixolydian flat 5 scale. Well, okay, it might be, it might not be. And the majority of it, I haven't met too many people that actually know what they're talking about. They read it in a book somewhere. But it's really quite basic when you understand the major scale. And the major scale is the mother master pattern, okay? So I'm going to play the major scale this time. In this session, we're going to look at the key of G, okay? So which note, as the patterns we're creating here, which note would you start on in the key of G, all right? For those of you who guessed any other note than G, you're wrong. It's G. It associates with the same name of the key that you're in, okay? You're in the key of G, you start on a G note. And that becomes not only our root note, but number 1 when we numerically associate it, okay? So if G is our 1, what is our 2? It's A, okay? Then we've got B, C, D, E. Now for now I'm just going to tell you the note and join it together, but later on I'll explain why it is this way. For now it isn't necessary. Mechanically speaking, just play the scale, get used to the sounds, and you'll figure out some of the key information later down the line. Because in the alphabet it's A to G, but it doesn't accommodate what an enharmonic tone is, or what they call an accidental, which is incorporating sharps or flats. Sharp raises a note a half step, and a flat lowers a note a half step. So in the key of F, in the key of G, okay, when we were in C, it was all natural. C, D, E, F, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, okay? But in the key of G, we start incorporating accidentals. And as we increment these new keys as they go on down the line, accidentals become more and more involved. In fact, as we progress through the keys in fifths, a sharp is added or a flat is added each time that you deal with this. And in the pattern of flats is adding a 4th, the pattern of sharps adding a 5th. For those of you who understand what that means, cool. For those of you who don't, just sit back and sit tight and I'll explain it to you. And understanding it is really the key of knowing what's going on. And it isn't that hard, so just relax, okay? In the key of G, we start with the root note. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. Okay? 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. So practice that scale a lot. Using the top 2 strings, you can practice anywhere in the neck. Anywhere, okay? One of the drills or little riffs or licks that I like to play is something that... It's so cool because that melody is taken completely from the major scale, no accidentals, okay? Just straight out, somebody just had a creative whim and created this little melody line that became the Muppet Show. And that's what music's all about. You have a scale, and then your combination of notes produce the phrase that you're making. And by understanding the numbers, it's the key to understanding how they make those phrases, because jazz sounds encourage or lean towards certain use of numbers or formula, where country sounds are the same way. Country sounds, there's certain notes and combinations. Certain sounds relate to the numbers. And if we want to play rock or blues or whatever it is, all of the numbers relate to certain, if I want to play bluesy kind of sounds, I play certain notes like minor thirds, flat fives. Certain notes related numerically are the pattern behavior, okay? So if I show up, like a few years ago I was called in and this guy needed a bass player, I showed up. Well, all he said was, okay, country and C. Well, that's all I needed to know because it gives me the key, my root note, and that it's country. So it's going to lean towards certain notes that give me country sounds, okay? So this is how it's starting to tie into actually knowing a little bit of theory and knowing a little bit about chords and how they work. That information is very valuable because if you want a jazz sound, then you lean towards certain notes and you'll sound jazzy. If you don't like jazz, you want a heavy metal sound, you lean towards certain notes, heavy metal. And whatever it is, there's all sorts of grinding out there. Okay, a lot of flat fives, flat sevens, flat nines, tension tones. But when I know my major scale, understanding what that means is really simple, okay? As opposed to saying, okay, well, put your finger here, and knowing the numbers equips you with the information to figure it out for yourself. So in the key of G, we start on a G note, and we play the scale. So I would ask you, now we're going to be playing a basic blues in the key of G. So what is our 1-4-5? We're learning 1-4-5 cadences, okay? Which is one of the 8 most commonly used cadences in the last 50, 60 years that's been around, okay? So what I'm telling you is by learning these basic cadences equips you with the information to play pretty much all the material that's out there because in one fashion or another it relates back to understanding the numbers and how they relate. Common gospel tunes, country, those kind of things, basic rock, Creedence, a lot of bands, Kiss, they used 1-4-5 like you wouldn't believe. Like if you knew how simple it was, what they were doing. In fact, it was said by this one teacher in the States. He mentioned that if everyone was equipped with this information on an education level from school, our standard of music would drastically change because we wouldn't put up with some of the simple things that we put up with, and actually there wouldn't be as many people making as much money as they are because we would just demand, like jazz musicians, just demand a greater, you know, listening to simple stuff when you're used to playing all these really far out chords can be really boring, okay? And now that doesn't bar for some, there's some good songs that are simple and creative and that's great. But overall, you get bored of playing the same chord, so play a C7th chord or a C9th chord. You can expound on that, and that comes back to understanding how the numbers work. So in the key of G, we start with G, A, B, C, and D, right? So we first off want to isolate which chords we're going to use. G is 1, G, A, B, C is 4, and D is 5. So just knowing that in itself, if I was saying, okay, let's try a certain tune in the key of G, well, you would just go, all right, where do you want to play those 3 chords? Because wherever you play them, G, C, or D, whatever it is, okay, those are the chords you'd be using. So you don't have to worry about, well, what's he going to be playing? I don't know anything. Well, it's 1-4-5. Figure it out. G, A, B, C, and D. Okay? Now, once we've learned that, we play the major scale. We go G. Now, this major scale becomes our mother pattern and master pattern because this is what we can get from it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we figured out that C is the 4th in G. Well, guess what? That's a C note. So the 2 connect. Now, 5 is right after 4. If 4 was C, well, 5 is D. G, C, and D. Now, as you're watching my fingers, it's important that you memorize that shape. 1, 4, 5. Because, for example, when I'm playing bar chords or rock chords, those become my guide fingers or root notes for those chords. That's a shape. Before. It doesn't matter what the song is, but just that by using those numbers, that's the whole key to understanding what's going on. So now, we've got a G, C, and D. How do you play those chords? Well, as far as these series being instructional, okay, we need to just know what the formulas are. It's just like figuring out a math equation. Once you know the basic formulas, you know, it's great. It's simple. It's very frustrating if you don't, though. So, in understanding music, you need to know some basic preliminary things. First off, the first thing you need to know is that there are 5 what I call families, okay, in music. Underlying principles in all the things that you hear. And that is major, minor, augmented, diminished, and dominant 7th series. Each one of these has a formula of its own that's different from the other, but are the underlying principles to all the sounds, okay? All of them. So you say, well, I don't need to know that. Well, that's true. You might not need to, but if you want to get anywhere on this instrument or any musical instrument, you need to know that. And it really isn't that complicated, okay? So we're going to concentrate on major, and as we get into minor, you'll see, oh, that's how it is, and that's why I play that way. And just having that information in front of you totally changes playing the guitar from a frustrating experience to achieving what you set out. Oh, I want to play a really cool tune here. Whatever it is, it won't be a struggle anymore, okay? So in the key of G, we want to first off play our G chord. The major triad is 1, 3, 5, okay? So what is that? We start with a G note. Now we can use the major scale in figuring this out. If you're not sure where the notes are, you don't have one of the grids in front of you with all the notes in there, and you're not sure what the notes are, well, you can use the major scale just by knowing the shape, because the numbers and the letters totally relate. There's no forgiveness in music. You're either on or you're off, okay? So I don't know if that's been helpful to tell you that or not, but the idea is once you know your shape, you can figure all of this out. And that's what I'm here for, to equip you with that. And you don't have to struggle anymore with this. And in fact, it's not only going to make you a better player, but you can also help someone else learn then too, okay? And if we all learn, then everybody benefits, and there's just jam sessions going on everywhere. We don't have enough jam sessions going on. So pick up this stuff and, you know, check it out. So when we've isolated our root note, whatever key, this is the whole point of this. You don't even necessarily need to know. I've been over the years in positions where I've had to learn how to play material. Well, sometimes it's been on the spot in live situations. I never had time to start thinking, okay, well, all these, well, what's my root note? What's my shape? Okay, once I know where my root note is, which chord is, the shapes become really clear, and just, oh yeah, well, it's B flat. All right. You know, by knowing the shape is the whole key to figuring things out and actually making sounds and creating sounds in this thing. The shape is the major scale, all right, and then the formula is whatever it is. We're learning 1, 3, 5, major formula. So we take the first one, 1, 2, 3, G, A, B. So there's our B note, it has to be the same, just is the way that it is. So we got B, C, D is our 5th note. Now D is the next string open. So to play a G chord, we've got a G, a B, D, then the next string, 3rd string is open, G, B, G. Okay, well that's how you play a G chord. Now 1, 4, 5 in G is G, C, and D. Let's go to play a C chord. Now we've learned a little bit of this when we've looked at the C chords, and you'll see that as we establish a foundation, this information is relative, meaning that we just don't grab stuff out there and grab stuff here and make it very frustrating. It's sequential, and it builds upon the information that you know or have learned already, okay? And that's an important key or point to make about this process of thinking that I'm encouraging to get in tune with, because it is sequential. It isn't that every time you go to some guitar teacher for lessons, he says, okay, we'll try these chords now, and let's learn, you know, Sloop John B or whatever it is today, and next song we'll learn, you know, Michael, row your boat ashore, and there's all these things that aren't relative. You can learn those chords by spending some time basically getting these formulas down. When you pick up a songbook, it will no longer be a mystery why they're playing those chords or even what chords they are. I've had to learn, for example, in situations guitar arrangements or being able to play guitar arrangements from a hymn book or piano music that has no chords. Well, just knowing what the triads and how they're constructed by looking at which notes on the staff, bass clef and treble clef, that the piano player is using, gives me the information and a general guideline of what possible chord I could play. And literally, by including the same combination of notes to the guitar, then I produce the chord that is relative to that song. And for the most part, I've been successful at being able to play, you know, hymns or any kind of piano music on the guitar. There's a number of playing situations that I only had piano music to, and I had to come up with a guitar arrangement. Well, this information is universal. So those notes told me which chords that I were going to play just because they were those notes that fit the formula. And it's actually a lot of fun. When you get into the number system and being able to relate that way, not only is it just less confusing, but then it becomes easy to understand. Okay, well, which numbers are they using? And you know, with all you young guys out there in this computer age, aptitude's not a problem. It's basic direction, goal setting, and actually applying yourself, okay? So, we've got a G chord. Now we need to play a C chord, which is the 4 chord, G, A, B, C, okay? Well, C, we find a C, and again, we're using information that's already been established, and then we'll expound on that, all right? A C is in the 4th of G, so we could figure it out this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's my C note, okay? Or for some of you who are a little bit more advanced than just basic beginners, you can look at the open note and go A, B, C, okay? Count it out that way, all right? Whichever way you're comfortable with is sort of the most important. Be open to learning as far as different ways and expanding, but understand that the end result's the same. We need certain notes to produce certain chords, and there's no forgiveness. You're either, you know, right or you're wrong, and the sounds will tell you. So we've got a C. There's our root note. Now we're playing a major triad. What is the major triad formula? 1, 3, 5. How do we know what a 1, 3, 5 is? We use the major scale. So now we start on the C note. Play the major scale. So now 1 is C, E is 3, F, G is 5. 1, 3, 5. So by playing the combination C, E, and G, okay, I've got my 3rd finger, 2nd finger, and the 1st finger's on the 2nd string, 1st fret, strumming the bottom 5 strings. Actually, sometimes I'll put my 3rd finger up and use my 4th finger on the C. I can play all the strings with that low G, just making it a little fuller, or even alternating. Okay? Now, we're in the key of G, 1, 4, 5. So we've got G, C, and the 5th one, you guessed it, is D. Okay? Well, what is a D? Let's see. What are we doing? Well, we're playing major chords. What is the major formula? 1, 3, 5. So we find a D. Well, how do I do that? Well, you can get a D from knowing where C is, because D is right after C. So if you know where a C is, D is right in the vicinity, okay? Or if we're in G using the master pattern, it's the 5th from G. Use your major scale to work for you. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or G, A, B, C, D, and there's another way of finding where D is. And this is the whole key and the insight to this process of thinking, because it relates, okay? And that's the important thing. And understanding here, it's not a bunch of information just for the fun of it. It's actually been tested and approved and worked over, and it's important that you actually learn the instrument in a graded fashion like this, because the information that you learn then, it's not just such a full-blown rush. We're building on what we already know, okay? And that's the thing. You don't know the major scale? Well, stop the presses, learn the major scale, and then this information is going to seem not only easier to you, but you'll be able to apply it, okay? And that's the whole key and the motive of doing this, is to equip you with the information necessary so that you can play, okay? So now, we've established where a D is. So, what do? Well, what are we doing? We need to find out what a D major triad is. Well, major is what? 1, 3, 5. Well, what pattern do we use? Well, we use, guess it, the major scale. So the major scale, we start on D, we just count it out. Even if you don't know the names of the notes, there's my 3rd, and there's a D chord. Now this is a kind of probably for some of you out there a little freaky of a D chord, okay? We'll go back to a conventional because we're in the 1st position. So we've got a G, a C. Now D starts on the 4th string open. Now the notes are D, F sharp, G, A. For now, we'll just trust me, it's an F sharp, and I'll explain how we got an F sharp and what that is at a later date. The important thing now is you get your hands on it and get your fingers working it through, okay? So we got a D. Now the next note is A. So it isn't that we're playing them in order, it doesn't matter, as long as you've got them in there. D, A, D, and F sharp. And there's a D triad. G, C, and D. Okay? The 1, 4, 5 in the key of G. G, C, and D. And those would be the 3 chords that you would use by playing any basic country, blues, rock, whatever it is. Okay? 1, 4, 5. So today we looked at some basic exercises, kind of expounded on a few things, and broke it down into the key of G, 1, 4, 5. Okay? And every session that we do from now on, we're just going to build on that and equip you with more information, equipping you with the ability and the dexterity to be able to play this stuff. Okay? So, keep up with the practice, 10-minute sessions. The box number is 369. You can send it to Community 10, label it Mastering the Guitar if you have any questions, or for the paperwork that's available, and we'll take it from there. All right? Hope you have fun, and we'll see you next time.